Prosecutors tell the jury that even though Sidney Loof's body was dismembered, there is clear evidence to show that she was murdered. Aubrey Trail chooses not to show up once again to Saline County District Court. Dr. Michelle Eliff, a forensic pathologist, testifies that Sidney Loof died of homicide that included strangulation. The autopsy examined the 13 body parts located and indicated Loof had abrasions on her wrists. Animals had gotten into some of the bags, and there may be signs of struggle before she died.
The bump on the head, the torn earlobe, the abrasions and contusions on the back, even the restraints themselves.
Toxicology indicates Loof had antidepressant medication in her system, but no signs of drugs of abuse. The defense argued that the autopsy couldn't prove if Loof's organs were used for a ritual or if this was an actual murder.
Based upon your examination, you were not able to determine whether the strangulation was intentional or unintentional, correct?
Based on the examination, no.
Dr. Stephen Symes, a forensic anthropologist, testified to the cuts made to dismember Loof's body. He said at least 3 different tools, a saw, possible knife, and shears or scissors were used.
A lot of people say, well, it's got to be a power tool. At the time when they left, they said, instead of a power saw, let's look for a hacksaw.
The judge didn't allow the public to see the autopsy photos in court. Reporting in Wilbur, Jake Wazakowski, 3 News Now. Aubrey Trail returns to court and tells the judge he'll be good and claims that he won't have another outburst, most likely because it's his turn to tell the jury what he says happened to Sidney Loof the night she died. He says his initial story was garbage. Trail comes back to Saline County District Court with large scars on his neck after he slashed his throat 2 weeks ago. He takes the stand in his own defense, claiming he and Bailey met Sidney Loof in March 2017 and paid her to be part of his illegal activity because she needed money.
You know, she was in desperate straits, I guess is the right way to put it, and I'm sorry to say I played on that.
Trail claims Loof left them for a while, but that in November 2017, Boswell wanted to restart a relationship and Loof needed money. That's why he was at Menards. He says he offered Loof $5,000 to be part of his antique theft ring. And the 3 ended up in sex acts involving choking when Trail claims she died accidentally. He adds there were no other women, and no one paid him $15,000 for a sexual fantasy.
Sidney Loof died that night. Later down the road, I come up with a story to try to protect me and her, you know, mostly her, but because it was only me, Bailey, and Sidney there the night Sidney died.
He admits he lied about videotaping the encounter. Trail claims there was no ritual involved in dismembering her body. He couldn't fit her in their car, so he cut her up on the kitchen floor and cleaned everything.
What did you use to dismember the body?
I used a saw that it's similar to a hacksaw blade, but it's, I call it a curve saw.
Trail said he panicked and they disposed of Loof's body in the rural Clay County field when it was light out. He admits to disposing the body, but says he didn't murder Loof.
On hindsight, it was a really bad decision, but it's one I own. I mean, I did it, I have to live with it.
Trail says the talk about witches, vampires draining Loof's blood, and sacred cemeteries was a complete lie. Reporting in Wilbur, Jake Wazakowski, 3 News Now. For the first time, prosecutors reveal the grisly details of what they think happened to Sidney Loof inside that Wilbur apartment in November 2017. Both sides give their closing statements in the first-degree murder trial of Aubrey Trail. Prosecutors say the premeditation was clear through video of what Trail and Boswell did the day Loof was killed.
Bailey Boswell and Aubrey Trail, how did they prepare for the day? They buy a hacksaw, they buy drop cloths, they buy bleach, they buy all the items you need to kill and dispose of a body.
They believe Loof was lured to the apartment to smoke weed and was ambushed in the living room, was choked to death with force.
She fought, she did not survive. This death was up close, it was personal. Strangled her, face to face, eye to eye. Squeezed the life out of her.
Prosecutors say Trail and Boswell put up drop cloths, creating a makeshift room to keep blood and evidence from spreading when they cut her up. The defense argued that the only evidence authorities have that Loof was killed in Wilbur was what Aubrey Trail told them, and their murder theory isn't based on evidence.
It didn't happen that way. You can't just make stuff up They're doing the same thing they're accusing Aubrey Trail of doing, is making stuff up.
Prosecutors say Trail and Boswell trended towards murder because of all the witchcraft, torture, and killing talk with his previous girls.
These people were practicing witchcraft. Do you ever hear any one of them say they went to a witchcraft meeting?
The defense argued that experts didn't testify the new hacksaw purchased was used to dismember Luf's body, so there was no premeditation. Prosecutors say Aubrey's stories about explicit sexual acts before her death with people she just met makes no sense at all.
He changed his story about the death of Sidney Luf in front of your eyes. So who's credible? Absolutely. Common sense.
Reporting from Wilbur, Jake Wazakowski, 3 News Now.
On the final day of the Aubrey Trail trial, both sides gave their closing arguments to the jury before they deliberated on if Trail killed Sidney Luf. Prosecutors told them Luf was lured to the apartment and then killed.
She fought. She did not survive. This death was up close. It was personal. Strangled her, face to face, eye to eye. Squeezed the life out of her.
The defense argued that authorities had no evidence of their theory that Trail killed Luf in the Wilbur apartment.
It didn't happen that way. You can't just make stuff up. They're doing the same thing they're accusing Aubrey Trail of doing, is making stuff up.
Closing arguments ended in the late afternoon, and it didn't take long, less than 3 hours, before the jury reached a verdict.
Do find the said defendant as to the charge of count 1, murder in the first degree, guilty of murder in the first degree by purposely and with deliberate and premeditated malice.
Trail was then convicted of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder as well. Afterwards, the family was clearly emotional. They declined to speak to media, as did prosecution, along with the defense, who say they may speak tomorrow.
Hey, we'll probably say something tomorrow. We got to get ready for the aggravator hearing.
And in that aggravator hearing tomorrow, the jury will determine if there are any aggravating conditions. If there are, Trail could face the death penalty. Reporting in Wilbur, John Kipper, 3 News Now.
Aubrey Trail has been found guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Sidney Luf here in Saline County Court. They were supposed to have an aggravator hearing, but that didn't happen. I still wanted to find out from the jury if they felt Trail's testimony was credible or not. Trail doesn't show much emotion when he's found guilty of murder and conspiracy. Sidney Luf's family embraces deputies and investigators at the conclusion. Jurors only deliberate for about 2.5 hours before saying Trail deliberately murdered Luf in his Wilbur apartment. Video surveillance shows them buying tools for the killing and cover-up. One told us everyone agreed.
I mean, it was just pretty much common sense, I think. All the evidence really was there.
Luf's family didn't want to comment outside of court. Trail testified in his own defense and said he'd been lying the whole time. There weren't 2 other women involved. Only he, Boswell, and Luf were at the apartment and claimed it was an accident. Jurors didn't buy it. When you listen to Trail's testimony, did you find him believable, or do you think he was just trying to con everybody again?
Just trying to con. Like at the end of the trial, you want to go ahead and try to tell the truth. It's kind of hard to believe it after you change your story 3, 4, 5 times, you know?
The defense argued investigators didn't know who killed Luf or where it happened. They said Wednesday was the first time they heard the prosecution's theory that she was ambushed in the living room and created a makeshift room with drop cloths to dismember the body. Joe and Ben Murray were disappointed with the verdict.
You know, we don't want to criticize anyone, but it was 4 weeks of testimony, 900 exhibits, and, you know, they weren't even out for 3 hours.
So now they're in the death penalty phase. They're going to have to get the 3-judge panel together consisting of 2 outside judges, and they'll decide if the aggravators outweigh the mitigators. That will likely take months before that hearing happens, and then some time after that before a decision is made on whether he will receive the death penalty or not. Reporting in Wilbur, Jake Wazakowski, 3 News Now.
Stay connected at 3newsnow.com.